This second generation iPad is from 2011, so I wanted to see if it was still worth buying in 2023. Let's get into it. So this iPad is a 64GB model and it has a 9.7-inch screen with 4:3 aspect ratio, which feels weird compared to new iPads because it has very large bezels. On the right bezel there is a home button, but unfortunately no Touch ID. The home button feels nice, but it is worse than my iPad 7th generation with the Touch ID home button. The iPad 7's home button just feels sturdier. On the top left corner of the iPad's frame, there is a switch to mute audio or to lock the iPad from rotating. This is something cool that is not in today's iPads and would be nice to have. Alongside the switch, there are volume up and down buttons as one button. It feels pretty much the same as having two buttons for volume. In the top of the left part on the iPad's frame, there is a power button and it has good feel to it. It is also reasonably sized. In the middle right side frame of the iPad, there is of course a 30-pin charging port because Lightning wasn't introduced yet when this iPad came out. In the left corner of the iPad's frame, there is a headphone jack, which has completely disappeared from the newest iPads. On the back of this iPad, there is a camera on the top right corner. It shoots really bad video and the photo is also very bad. But it is still better than I expected, considering that this iPad is 12 years old. One bad thing about this iPad's design is that the edges are kinda sharp and holding the iPad is uncomfortable. I think it makes the experience from using this iPad much worse. But the problem is tackled by using a case. I don't have this sharp edge problem with my 7th generation iPad. The cool thing about this iPad's design is that it has magnets to attach this smart folio to the bottom. When it is fully on the screen, the iPad closes and makes this nice locking sound. My 7th generation iPad doesn't have this feature, but it has the smart connector in the bottom of it, which is pretty much the same as using magnets. This iPad is running iOS 9.3.5. The software doesn't feel old, although it is over 6 years old. The OS feels relatively smooth and there are less problems than I expected. There aren't a lot of supported apps or that is sold on the App Store. In reality, some apps and games work, although the App Store says that a newer version of iOS is needed. An example of that kind of app is Spotify. But don't get your hopes too high. YouTube doesn't work, that's a huge minus, at least for me and probably for the majority of people buying an iPad. It works on the web, but an app is obviously better. The web version works shockingly though. Apple's own apps work great, such as Notes, Music and GarageBand. But especially Notes has less features on iOS 9 than with iOS 16. Notes on iOS 9 are pretty basic, and iOS 16 on the other hand has many useful features, such as scanning documents and drawing. There is one very interesting thing about this iPad, and it's that there's kind of a password to open the iPad instead of unlocking the iPad with a passcode. I think it is a bit more inconvenient to use a password instead of passcode because it takes a longer time. The bright side to using a password is that it's probably more secure than using a passcode. The battery life is surprisingly good on this iPad, considering the age of this iPad. It's over 3 hours. I'm completely fine with that amount of battery life, but when traveling it's not enough. The charging speed is not great, which is usual with the 30-min charge iPad especially. The charging speed is also not the best on my 7th generation iPad, but it is still much better than this old iPad because of a 20-watt charger.